All right, so one of the things that I always tell my students if I get the rare opportunity to teach a communications class for cyber professionals, I'll always tell them this line that makes me sound really philosophical. And I go, watch how you look on the camera, but also watch how you sound. I think it's always very, very interesting. And I'll just repeat that. Watch how you sound. Normally it's listen to how you sound, but here I go with watch how you sound. And the reason I do that is because I really want folks to understand that when you see yourself in a recording, you actually don't just pay attention to what you're saying. You start to begin to observe how your body is responding to certain moments. Do you move forward? Do you move back? Do you lean in a particular direction? And you start to realize these things about how people are observing you while you speak. And it really says a lot. I know we say 90% of the trick is showing up and then 10% is putting in the effort, but I also think it's not just showing up, it's how you show up to that moment. Alex, I got to ask you this question. When you watched Module 1 again, were there any things where you go, you know what? When I was talking about this, maybe I should have looked Ali straight in the eyes as opposed to looking at my notes. Does that ever happen to you, or is it just me being absolutely critical of myself?
No, we are our own worst critics. I've been playing with YouTube for almost 8 months now, and I'm always so critical of how I'm saying it, how I'm pronouncing something. It is our worst enemy. But I do have to say I had no notes during this module
I
either.
believe you. No, I actually do believe you because I didn't give you anything to make notes with.
I know.
Because every conversation, we booked meetings for an hour, and in 5 minutes, I was like, yeah, module done. Like, you get it, right? So we'll just flow with it. Well, that was pretty much our prep meetings for ODTN Vancouver.
It was pretty solid. What I will say though is like notes and scripts are sometimes our worst enemy because we're so trained to read and focus on them and not focus on what you're saying. And I guess, to your point, how you're saying it.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah, you make a very valid point. James, before we dive into module 2 and 3 and we say our hellos and pleasantries, I just want to ask you this question is when you walk into the war room, and I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of incidents. I know this is a bit of a left field question, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless. Do you get conscious of what am I wearing? How am I looking? Do those things matter? Like, is it important for somebody to be giving a press conference after a cyber incident to look absolutely all over the place? Is it important for them to look like they're tired? Does that have an impact on how the public or how the war room is shaped? I want to put that question to you.
Well, luckily, I'm going to say for me, I've never had to sit in front of the camera after with a press conference or something. So that's the side of it I've just never experienced. But I mean, from the other side of it, definitely, I think it comes into it. I know there's been situations where, the incident starts and it never starts at the start of your day where you have your coffee ready and everything to go. It's normally that point in time of the day where you're maybe lagging a bit. You need that extra coffee. And yeah, there is definitely that time of where you've brought everything together. You're a little bit flustered. Then you look down, you're like, oh, I'm got my pizza stain on the shirt today, right? Like that sort of thing. So I think there is a little bit when you're trying to start out. I think although also that for me, like when I come into that, it's okay, take a breath, collect myself before we get into it. Because I think the you know when things are going bad, when things are going sideways, you want to just dive into it and start fixing, right? And it's just okay, let's get ready for this, and because we know it's going to be a long ride.
Yeah, I'll take this a step further. I know we're gonna go diving into the sessions, but one of the things that you realize very quickly when you're hosting this and you're watching it again, obviously you become a little conscious of yourself. What are you wearing? How are you looking when you're responding? And if you're angry, is that coming off right away? If you're nervous, if you're uncertain, I think these people read into these things. But I also think that, when I rewatched Module 1, you also begin to realize the importance of diversity at the table of the war room. And I'm not just talking about it from a gender perspective. I think you realize very quickly how important it is to have different experience levels, how important it is to have different perspectives, so that you're piecing apart the situation that you're in many different ways. And I do believe, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but from a human perspective, how you show up at the table, I think does have an impact. Not just the lighting in the room, who walks in, who you walk in with. I think all has an impact. And with that, we're going to dive into Module 2 from ODTN Vancouver. Folks, I'm joined by my co-chairs, Alex, who's going to be my co-chair very soon, 2 weeks from now in Ottawa, Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, and James, who's going to be my co-chair in Calgary. And you've met them in last week's behind the scenes. I'm going to jump right into it. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. And I kid you not, there are moments, especially in Module 2, when we started to invent certain things as we went along. You just have to. If you are learning how to host tabletop exercises, I will tell you again, you have to have the ability to invent certain moments and certain occasions. But I want to go specifically to a very key moment in Module 2. And the CyberX team, if you could play from, I think it's the 3rd minute, 19 seconds-ish, when we have the media coverage. I want to go to this for a moment and just ask a few questions. CyberX team, if we can play the next 40 seconds, please.
Lots of fun, but yes, when you do exit, keep silent because we're dealing with a really serious situation. And now back to character. Well, like I mentioned, the media has had something to say. And the next report, at least for me, is quite concerning. I'm going to draw your attention to the first media report for Module 2.
Yeah, this is that moment. We'll just watch like 20 seconds of this, and I want to unpack it a bit.
This is Roshan Khan from CyberX News. A widespread network disruption is impacting critical services, including healthcare, finance, and critical infrastructure, forcing organizations to find urgent workarounds. First detected at ODTN Telecom, the outage has no official response yet, but reports indicate it is likely the result of a cyber attack. Now, there are growing concerns that the attackers could expand their reach, targeting even more sectors. Officials are
I'd like to
racing to
pause. I'd like
contain
to
the
pause over there.
disruption
I really,
and
I
restore
like this moment because I think folks don't realize that while we were deliberating amongst ourselves, should we call this an incident, should we not? The media and the public had already started putting out their own analysis. James, I want to ask you because I don't think we did this, but I just ask you at this kind of a moment, how critical is it to start reaching out to the public? Should you hold back until you know the full picture, or do you need to start issuing out messages? What do you think you would have done in this scenario? Because we were debating, should we address the public right away?
Yeah,
And then the media is going, something's going to happen, something's going to happen. What do we do at this time?
I think personally, the way I would look at it, and how we've kind of run through scenarios before with crisis communications outside of even talking about cybersecurity, is getting into at least getting out a holding statement, saying we know something's going on, we're not sure exactly what, more info to follow. Essentially, for us, I think that was always kind of key. We want to make sure that we're responding to the public that way they know, and I'm going to get um, get the public's kind of on your side a bit if they understand that you're trying to proactively deal with something. I think if you I've seen cases where people or organizations wait really long and then try to get out something that's all tied up nicely with a bow, and the court of public opinion's already made their decision. The verdict's already passed.
Agreed. But Alex, I think this was that moment also where I was a little I wasn't sure, to be honest, should we issue out a public statement? You were also kind of going, can we declare this as an incident or not? Why, by this point, we're already, halfway through the day in the narrative of the game. Why were you still sort of on the back foot about, I don't think we need to go out into the public? And if I recall right, it took a little bit of pushing before you said, all right, well, if you wanted to get this out, we can. Why were you still a little bit defensive?
My resistance to declare the incident was that we didn't actually have any indicators of compromise at this point. We had external media reports, which we were trying to validate. Now, there was some side story with the tools not working and things like that, adding complications to the business being able to make that decision. But first, any good incident response plan is going to have some thresholds of when you would declare an incident, what the type of incident is, severity, things like that. So it hadn't passed the sniff test. And secondly, like in business, the security team always gets a bad rap if they make a bad call. So in that scenario, I brought in real experience of crying, saying the sky is falling too many times and then not being listened to. So I was trying to represent that hesitance from the technical team. From the business side, like there isn't really a good answer here because letting the media run the narrative is not great, but you don't actually have enough information to go on to actually provide a statement from the company. So it was a bit between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I think you know what it was for me, and I don't think I brought this up. And when I watched this, I think I missed something here. And that was I was sort of in agreement with you, but at the same time, I was also coming after you, right? You and Shreya say, I need more, I need more, I need more, and sort of having you invent the future on the go because I got to keep the narrative going. But I think I missed an opportunity here to talk about, hey, be mindful because there could be a counter media narrative that's part of this attack, that's part of this payload, that could be a series of fake news posts that are going out there. There could be some deep fakes that are going out there suggesting, hey, they've hit telecom, they're coming for the hospitals next. I think we missed this inject. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. Well, and in module 2, everyone, all the players were getting a lot more comfortable with each other, and the improvisation was like starting to increase at a really nice pace.
Yeah, it was starting to increase, and I think also by this time when module 1's done, and we got into module 2, and I know we were playing the video. I think we underestimated the power of bringing in the young defenders of the North. If you recall, when they came in, nobody was expecting them to come in. These were these young individuals who, walking into this UN-style room. They had just seen me upstairs, launch their event, and I was like, "Yeah, I got fun of that," being cautious not to swear, but also swearing at the same time. But suddenly they're seeing me in this formal position. But before module 2 began, everybody started clapping loudly. And I think that changes the attitudes of people. It just puts you in a way like you'll probably see it on the screen. It'll probably put you in this, it puts you in a different mood sometimes when you have that moment happening. But I'll tell you something that I found at the start when we started getting into this debate of, okay, should we declare it an incident or not? I think this is that moment when us as tabletop hosts, or exercise hosts in this case, I think this is that moment when we have a challenge to say, okay, palms on its side, let's dive into the technicalities. James, I want to ask you, and I think I struggle with this a little bit. How easy is it to talk about technical scenarios without boring people with, oh, these are all the logs, these are all the logs. Now let's just pour ourselves into the logs. I think that's a challenge. Maybe it's because we have short time, but is there a way you recommend we look at logs while not making it a boring analysis of lines and lines and lines of data? How can we make that technical analysis a little more engaging?
It sounds funny, but I think it kind of comes down to the day. I'm going to say some days I'm going to be very articulate and be able to
Yeah.
do that translation, and some days I'm, again, haven't had that coffee, or it's not computing, and the ability to be able to articulate that and do that translation on the fly might suffer. So, I mean, it really comes down to, I think, just trying to do that sort of scenario as much as possible. But like for me, sometimes I can come into a boardroom and articulate something really well, to take 3 minutes when I had 5, that sort of thing. And sometimes
Yeah.
I'll come into the boardroom and I've got 5 minutes, and it's 17 minutes into that 5-minute conversation, right? Because you're having to go back and you know write the narrative, rewrite the story for them.
And I want to jump
This
in
is,
there. I
yeah,
think
please.
uh, as in a tabletop, whether in a large scale event like Operation Defend the North, or even on a more corporate basis, it still needs to have everyone involved and be arguably fun. So diving into the life of a SOC analyst is not necessarily the excitement that an audience can really sink their teeth into. So I think it's showing some visuals of what raw logs look like, but really leaning on the data visualization capabilities and like showing like Shrey's up down monitor map, right? It like gives a
Yeah.
visualization of something that arguably doesn't have a very beautiful physical representation anyways.
I think it's one of those moments also, right, boys, when you're like, you challenge yourself because as all of you, have taken on, senior executive roles in security. And when it gets to the technicals, I think I beat myself down where it's like, Ali, if you can't explain it simply, you probably don't understand it. And sometimes, and I'll be honest, there are some moments, Alex, when you've come out and, given us a little bit of context around how, let's say, a SCADA network operates, and you go, I actually didn't know that. And then you realize yourself as a tabletop host, you're kind of like, oh, I have a lot of blind spots. I got to keep this going. But I think, while we were starting to edge towards technicals, and I do remember on the chat, we had a lot of people going, hey, I want to see more of the logs. I want to see more of the logs. But I think, the reality is that everybody that was participating in the exercise kept pushing about, hold on, we'll look at the logs, but are we missing certain compliance requirements? If I can have the CyberX team go to about, I think it was like 4 minutes and 50 seconds. And this was when we started getting messaging from the board. If we can turn up the volume on that, I just want to
So before I
see.
actually dive into this, as I mentioned before, for those who are
Yeah.
watching online, please keep your comments coming. I have a stream of comments that are coming to me. I'll try to weave
This is
them
not
in.
easy multitasking on these
Occasionally,
tabs, but
I will
that's a
release
separate
some polls
story.
as well. To those that are watching as well, a little bit more during the sessions, I will see if there are a couple of questions. Feel free to chime in. But I do want to raise all of your attention to another comment that was made in the chats. And Parul, this might be of interest to you. The question came up that if the CEO has said no communications with the media, how are they finding some of this out? I have, along with Alex, put out a request to see which staff members are on vacation and have logged in while on vacation. There is suspicion that there is an insider involvement at this point. Again, I don't
Yeah,
know, but
this is the
everything's on the
moment. I want to
table at this
pause
point.
right here. I think, this inject where, we didn't plan for this. And then somebody in the chat said, the CEO has said, no more communications, and is asking, how is the media even getting to know about this? This question of an insider threat. Alex, for a moment, when I was making out this narrative of an insider threat, I kept asking myself, is this realistic? And then Lockbit comes to mind, and some of the actors within institutions come to mind, and there's Alex as well. The realism of an insider threat. Did you struggle a little bit with working with that narrative, or was it just no, this can actually happen?
Well, it certainly came from left field. So I had to run and jump to catch it. I think it is realistic, and not necessarily a malicious insider threat, but a willing idiot, somebody that's brought a threat in that they're not aware of its of the consequence. So is it an insider threat in terms of somebody that was actually trying to do some malicious? It does happen for sure.
Yeah. James, can I just twist this a little bit for you, right? And one of the questions that I'm going a little bit off script here, but then again, that's my middle name. So during the actual session, I had my Slack open, I had the ODTN chat, but I kid you not, I had two phones on me, and one of the phones I was just connected to Wi-Fi. I synced my WhatsApp on it. And I had a couple of my students that were messaging me and just, throwing some of their questions in there. And I just was browsing it, seeing what, something that I could pick up on. And they asked me this question where they said, what if the CEO is involved in this? And it's someone in your war room that's involved in this. Is that something that goes through your mind that, hey, in security, we're all about zero trust? Is that something that goes through your mind in the war room that, hey, this person that I'm trusting, could be that insider who's now, you know, leading us down a path which is meant to not make us recover? Does that go through your mind at all?
I mean, there's going to be all these movie tropes that always kind of go play through your
Yeah.
mind of who it is. Is it the second in command, or like that sort of thing. So I think in some cases, yeah, it can come through that. Normally, I'm looking at, I think, what Alex kind of really articulated is, there's that unwilling idiot that went and did something. A lot of times it's normally what I'm guessing the case is from an insider threat. But yeah, there definitely is that potential of, somebody's, doing something that, from adjusting markets or things like that, because there is some personal gain for that. There's always that capability, maybe not the capacity, but to do that.
And the audience ate it up too, because
Yeah.
of my resistance to going along with the story, because I wasn't fulfilled with that there was enough evidence to say that we saw something. Everything was green for us. So I did start feeling like I was the insider threat and was going to find out one way or the other.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you're so freaking spot on. Is that, that thing that you said that the audience ate it up? You have to realize, folks, yes, there's the element of, we need to make this very real. We got to do all of those things. I get that. But Alex, myself, and everyone at the table is kind of looking around and going, is the audience actually engaging with this? And I'm not gonna lie to you, there were moments when you saw a couple of people go, okay, that doesn't sound believable. But then there were a few that were kind of trying to peer in. And I think there was that moment where I think Alex, someone pointed that could it be Alex who's sabotaging us to begin with? That was awkward.
At the break, people were coming up to me and thinking that there was some sort of guessing game about who done it, and they definitely said, "You're the insider threat." I was like, "I actually don't know. We'll find out."
It's interesting if you watch the video, you see Maddie was also there. Maddie was so just so everyone understands, look, there's a table, there's multiple chairs, there's an AV production that's taking place. Sometimes you just want someone there who can keep the conversation going. You don't want to have an empty chair, whatever have you. Maddie was told to just chime in when he could from an outsider perspective. I think he did once or twice. But you can totally tell on Maddie's head, all that's going through his head is my live stream up? Is the camera angle good? The stress on him was like, you could see it sitting right next to him. And I do appreciate how much stress goes into this. Talking about stress, AV team, I'm going to come back to you. So there was another moment where I think it was around, yeah, let's go to like the 45th minute, 45 minutes, and I think it was like 20 seconds. There was this moment when there was this debate that was going around about, what resources does the security team have? And we started looking more and more into the technicals. I just want to play this for the next couple of minutes and just talk a little bit about this. Go ahead.
Since the knock is saying that was not scheduled, I'm ready to declare an incident.
Go back to the ready to declare this. So well done.
That's the declaration of the incident right there.
Yeah, that
At
was
this
the
point,
moment.
I'm still. I get what you're telling us. I'm going to turn it back to Pearl, and maybe if TJ, if you want to chime in over here, Pearl, from your perspective now, hearing what you've heard, does it change your procedures in any way? Does it change what you are looking at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. Thank you, Alex. I would like to connect with our partners in CSIS, and I would like to get ready for some internal and likely, to Jillian's point, public advisory at this point, because what happens in such cases when there is a focus on one type of incident, the adversaries actually look out for those opportunities to create more platforms.
This was an important moment, I think, and we can halt it here for a second, CyberX team, because James, I want to get your position on this. Now, you weren't there, but if you notice, what happened is the moment Alex finally said, "Okay, well, the Christmas tree is all lit up. I think we can confirm there was an incident."
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, exactly. There was this humorous moment, but at the same time, there was this relief that, okay, we know we've been hit. Is that really a moment of relief, or is it just, okay, well, now you come to terms with it that you've been hit? What's going through your head at that kind of a moment?
In a sense, there is almost a moment of relief because you now have a sense of purpose. You know that you're having to start to action, and it's not just a bad Monday or that. I think that's the key kind of thing that starts to go in your head. I mean, for myself, I know, having been in incidents previously, once you know there's something, you're going to start down that path. For me, I just you settled in. Your everything else fades away, and it allows you to kind of just focus and I'm gonna say hyper focus. So I think that's probably consistent on a lot of teams. Is as soon as they have that, now they have that hyper focus towards one mission, one goal set sort of thing.
And this was it. CyberX team, if you can just go back a couple of seconds, there was that moment when we started seeing those screenshots of the text messages that patrons were getting of ODTN Telecom. And I'm just going to freeze on this. I don't need you to play. Just freeze on that screenshot when we saw these text messages. I think this was that moment now when we were going, okay, so we have an outage, we have this, but now there's something else in parallel that is happening. I think this was that moment, Alex. I don't know if you'd agree with me, but this was that moment when people realized not only is this about taking down the service, this is about now hitting the clients directly. This is, yes, it could be nation state driven at bringing us down, but this is also a financial grab. This is a reputational grab. I think the gravity of the incident started to set in at this moment.
Like there's a lot of emotions when we're dealing with incidents, right? And I actually want to play on both what James says and what you said. This is, again, one of those heart rate increasing moments where you're seeing the complexity of the incident. But back to the do you have like a sigh of relief knowing you are under attack now? Like, yeah, because uncertainty sucks. And when you're getting all these external pressures, but you're unable to validate it, that, very frustrating. So, what James was saying with that focus, that laser focus, is the adrenaline kicking in, and you getting tunnel vision on what actually needs to be done. And I was chatting with somebody the other day, and people with ADHD actually thrive in incident type scenarios because they can be so hyper focused. Because ADHD is two things: it's not being able to focus, but also being able to hyper focus. And anyone that, you know, has been up till 1, 2 in the morning hacking away on something knows exactly that focus.
Yeah, the neurodiversity of it. I don't think, you know, when we do our unpacking, maybe when we talk about like the closing modules in future behind the scenes, I think that is something that, you know, we don't talk a lot about is the psychological traits and strengths and the mental armor that people bring to these situations. You know, someone while we were doing this session, I think at after the session, I was having a debrief with some of the ODTN, the young defenders of the North, and they were just talking to me about the experience, and I was very clear, and maybe I'm overthinking. It was like technically you're cybersecurity, cyber warfare. And that's what you're dealing with, right? You can't just hide behind a wall and say, I really hope, you know, they don't catch me here and that I escape any forms of attack. Sometimes you have to be in the front to deal with these situations and face them head on. And I think this was one of those moments where who's going to take responsibility and who's going to steer this ship forward. Did you feel, or maybe James, I'll come to you. Do you feel that these war rooms can sometimes, because of the emotions, it can sort of become a little bit of a blame game as well?
Absolutely. I mean,
Interesting.
depending on what the emotions were for everyone that's coming in, that it can really, you know, exacerbate whatever. So if somebody's coming in feeling stressed or feeling like they're under the gun already, and
Yeah.
you haven't done a level set coming into that room, it's just gonna keep running away that way. It's again that adrenaline kicking in, and just whatever you're doing, you're going to continue to do so that way.
You know what's very interesting, and this was in one of the post-event surveys. I think we've incorporated this in Ottawa and the future ODTNs is expanding it over, you know, a couple of days, the timeline. But someone had mentioned also, you know, the time of the month, the time of the day that it's happening, the day of the week, all has an influence on the nature of the response. And to really throw a curveball into things, something like this happens on a weekend or a long weekend, or better yet, Christmas, going along the theme of Shrey's Christmas tree lighting up, there's a different kind of response to all of this. And with that, CyberX team, I just want to look at one more thing of module 2. If you can go to the 50th second, I would say like 50 minutes and a couple of seconds in, I just want to play this moment. I think it was Newman who was speaking. Yeah, I just want to hear this moment out.
Playbook at this point, and we're going to continue to run that every hour until we start getting very, very good results and progress throughout. Communications teams will be obviously tasked to give us time, because that's what we need right now. We need to start actioning on investigation, repair, and getting everybody working.
I appreciate that, Newman. I think Savannah is in agreement with you, but Parul, please.
Could I add quickly one point here, Newman? I believe
This was
we
an
would
interesting
also
one.
need to preserve all the forensic related evidence from here onward. So please, FYI for everybody, let's make sure of that.
So here
this
was a
point,
moment that
Alex,
I
please
think,
go ahead.
and we can lower the
All right, the SOC
volume
has
right
pulled out the
now.
IRP.
And maybe Alex, I can bring this to your attention is I think this was that moment also where we really came to terms with, and the audience came to realize the critical role of communications now in actually allowing the technical team to do what they need to do. There was a question though, which we didn't address. And I wanted to see if you had any thoughts about if you were asked this question at this moment. Imagine you were there again, April, whatever this we held this event. Somebody had asked me later on, why didn't we talk about our internal communications protocols? Are we still going to use cell phones maybe on another network? Are we using something away from our traditional, let's say, our corporate Slack? We didn't actually go into that. A miss?
Yeah, that's the word that just came to mind was miss. But that's also like exactly what we want to bring up in module 5, right? Is that these were things that like we didn't cover. And you know, something like maybe it is on us, the facilitators, to like be trying to pull those strings out. We have to sort of see what they bring to the table. What do they know about their internal processes and incident response plans? And you know, we may need to fish for it more, but that's certainly something. I guess like in the tabletop exercise, they're all around a round table. They have no other external communication. So it was probably something that wasn't like top of mind for them, but in the real world, it certainly is a concern particularly if your M365 is compromised. It's the way that you communicate, and now it's entirely untrusted. Signal gets spun up on a lot of people's phones that you'd never think would have Signal on it because of these incidents.
Agreed. And this is interesting. Someone actually just a friend of mine who's watching just WhatsApp me this question. He said, and he asked, and James, maybe I'll put this to you, and I think it's a
Sure.
valid point. He says, Ali, what about everybody here is playing in person? They're there, well, participating in person. Wouldn't it have been interesting to zoom in or Teams in the CEO who, I made the narrative was out golfing somewhere in the Bahamas and, whatever I said something to that effect. Would it have changed a little bit of the conversation if you had somebody joining in virtually as well?
So this is really interesting because we've actually ran that scenario in tabletops. And within the last year, we actually provided a little bit of friction. We had teamsing in with 3 different classrooms when we were running that scenario. We haven't done it for everything, but we did it for one to provide that bit of latency. There's times when we'd mute our mic so they couldn't hear what we were saying. They could see something going on, but then we'd have to then come back and articulate that. So I think it totally changes the dynamic. It also makes it a bit more real because I think we're much more distributed now than we were 5-6 years ago. 5-6 years ago, that this was kind of like, oh, you might have a team that's distributed, even with talking about RTO mandates. There's still a lot of that more distributed network, and
For sure.
yeah, there's anything, especially when you're dealing with a national incident, anything's game, right? So your best laid plans can go
Yeah,
sideways.
absolutely. And it's in those moments, I have to tell you that as you're moderating this, in real time in the war room, like, you almost take the role of an incident commander. I have to tell you that when you have everybody in person, then you have somebody remote weaving their voice in, making sure they're heard, people are not speaking on top of one another. It is a real challenge. And I don't think people appreciate how difficult it is to ensure that that communications playbook is followed through. At this point, I'm going to ask the CyberX team to start preparing us for the next module, and I'll sort of let the audience know where we were headed towards this. But before I even go to the next module, I think people need to also understand what happens in the break between modules. Most people think we probably go to the washroom, check our WhatsApp. WhatsApp I'm checking while I'm moderating. But people think we're gonna get a cup of tea and have some cookies or whatever have you. But I think when those breaks happen, 3 things happen for me at least at in Vancouver. First, I think Alex realized that I'm a real pain in the ass and I'm not following any script, and he just has to live with it now. That was one. But the second thing that happened, Alex, do you remember? I think it was Octavia who just brought us into a huddle, and it felt real. That happened. And then
Yeah.
the third thing that started happening was, and this is a challenge, people from the crowd start coming down, not to introduce themselves, oh, I'm so and so. They start coming to you and they're talking to you. The exhaustion and the reality is real. Would you agree, Alex?
Oh yeah, and when I did go for a pee or a coffee, I was also stopped by people
Yeah.
asking how I was doing, asking if I was the insider, all that. But no, that huddle was really good because we were, and Octavia has been through multiple Operation Defend the North, so she really does know the flow and whatnot. So she was coming in to try to get some things on course. Again, this is all improvised, right? So it does fork. So we were just trying to figure out and strategize, like, what can we adjust to get back to this point. But it was really fascinating having the audience members both coming in and suggesting things, but also just watching that conversation.
Yeah, and it was very interesting. And then you'll obviously find that one individual, James, that just knows it all, or at least claims to know it all. And I'm kind of, oh, you should have done that, should have done that. I was like, yeah, well, okay, great. When you become president of the world, that's exactly what we'll do. But I have to still maintain this stoic face. Go, that's a great point, and then just say, I need 5 minutes so I can breathe, and then go into the next module. But James, there was one thing also that started to happen at this moment. we had, as you saw in module 2, I think we had an individual from Clarity. I think we had someone from Google as well. But Clarity and specifically and that organization, they focus exclusively on SCADA networks, so on and so forth. The one thing that I really enjoyed in my conversation with the individual from Clarity was he actually just came up to me and said, you know what? Initially, I just wanted to do a demonstration of our tool and said, this is how our tool could have helped. And he turned around and said, but what I enjoyed was building that trust to that point where someone says, well, you seem to know this. How can you help? And I think that's a really, really important message to vendors is before, you're looking at, I look at vendors as partners, but before you try to just show us why your tool is the next best thing after sliced bread, you have to build that trust. Agree, James?
Agree. It's kind of this thing that I see, with so many vendors that do try to reach out to me. It's like, if you want to get with me, you have to understand who I am. You have to understand what my where I am with the business, why we do what we do. If you don't, then you're never going to have that trust. You're never going to have that good relationship. Those that understand that take the time to curate that, you have amazing partnerships. And you could see really the difference between those that understand that and those that don't.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And it built those relationships. And then I'm going into module 3, and in my head, I'm thinking, all right, I got to make this exciting. I got to keep the temperature going. We're just past lunch. Lunch, Alex, whose freaking idea was for lunch to be loaded with carbs? Because I was like, yeah, people are going to get sleepy. The lights get dim over here. And then I was like, this is going to
The
be
lights were
interesting.
dim.
Yeah, the lights were dim. But you know what? People stayed, people came back and started to engage even more. But then we got into this mode of eradication. And CyberX team, while I'm queuing you up, if you can go to like the 8 minute and 40 seconds, in my head, I'm going, the biggest risk right now is not taking any risks. And I wanted to push everyone to let's do something to eradicate. Let's do something to bring the systems back up. And then this moment happens roundabout now. Let's just listen in if we can for now.
That's great. So, Chris, now that you've heard what TJ has to say and his plan of action, based on your industry knowledge, do you think those are appropriate actions, or would you have other recommendations?
I think those are the start of some important actions. Before we start going down, separating the work streams, absolutely. Technical counsel, C-level boardroom counsel, right? Getting the right people in the room, maintaining communications, proper communications, to essentially try to ensure that there are no data leaks getting out, at least from the trusted inner circle, and only bringing those people in that have an absolute need to know of this incident. As far as the technical work streams go,
this is the moment.
Before setting up any sort of green networks, we have to know what it is we're dealing with. We have to know what is really the scope of the incident, indicators of compromise, because the last thing any of us want is to start building out our green network with the critical systems that we're going to expect to be safe and secure, only to not have done our root cause investigation to really know the seriousness of the impact.
Yeah, I think this is that moment when we can pause, and you know what? I do want to pause at this moment because firstly, I think Alex, you would agree that after you and I sort of championed through module 1 and module 2, Newman just seamlessly fit into the role and just took it away from there. I think it was very important to have Newman then sort of kickstart. It brought a different temperature to the room, no?
Oh yeah, and Newman's great and he's got a lot of experience in the IR space.
Yeah.
So we're lucky to have him on our advisory board. I got to say, there's like two types of CEOs in regards to incident response. There's the ones that know they don't know anything. This is well outside of their comfort zone, and they go to their leadership, their security team, and say, "What do you need? I'm here to help." Then there's the others that are much more eager to just get this behind us. They don't understand the complexity of rebuilding, particularly after ransomware or something mangling your Active Directory. And they're pushing and pushing, making people work 12, 15 hours trying to get the business back online. And even against all the experts' advice of we are not ready to go live yet, they push it. And I've been on multiple incidents where reinfection took the business down again and again because of the velocity that was put on the technical team to recover.
I think that started to come up a bit, right? And then, I obviously started playing the devil's advocate with the business. And there were moments when you and Shrey were talking into each other's ear and going, okay, well, try this. Let's not try and push them to bring us back up right away. But then I started bringing in that business voice, which is we're losing money in this situation. If I recall correctly, I think we also struggled a great deal with understanding what insurance could do for us at this moment. And I don't know, James, if you want to chime into this, but if I recall correctly, it was almost like, we talked about maybe insurance can help us with some additional resources, maybe it can help us recover some of the damages. But it wasn't a topic that we went too deep into. It was almost like nobody cared about what the cyber insurance could do for you at that time. I don't know, was that, I mean, you weren't there, but that's the kind of feeling I had while watching it again. Is that something that can happen where like insurance is there, not there? Who cares? We got to figure this out on our own.
Yeah, I think so. I think what happens is within the moment, a lot of people, I mean, with experiences dealing with, I'm going to say insurance, not even the cyber aspect, you're always dealing with it after the fact. So you're never like, okay, hey, pick up the phone, call them. And so, I mean, a lot of where they're incident responders and that do work with your cyber insurance, if you know them, you'll have them on speed dial. If you don't know them, you're going to be scrambling when that time happens. And so you put that out, I think, naturally. So to me, I look at that. It would be great to bring them in. Sometimes it's going to be the afterthought, and sometimes you're just trying to solution the problem that you don't think you'll get that in place. And I do know with certain providers that it may take some time to actually validate. Are you actually within the bounds of something, or did you do something that invalidates your contract? Right. So.
Yeah, there was this really, really interesting moment where now, we're having this thing of, okay, we're going to get to the root cause analysis. And the gentleman from Sophos kept emphasizing that root cause analysis, what's happened over here. And I'm conscious of time. We have about 8 to 9 minutes left. But there was this moment, and I think it was at around CyberX team. If you can go to the 15th minute, I think it was 15 minutes and 20 seconds or something to that effect. I might get it a little bit wrong. I want to hear this moment again because I think this shook everyone. Yeah, around about here. Yeah, that looks about right. Let's hear it from this moment. Thank you.
That's not my concern. And I'll tell you why it's not my concern. So hold on a second. I've been told to kick it up a notch, so I'm going to kick it up a notch. So what the hell are we doing, right? We're not doing this properly. Our priority should be restoration of services to the people who depend on us to provide them these services. I'm hearing phone calls now of nurses and doctors in hospitals that rely on our telecom services who are no longer able to treat patients. Fridges that contain blood are prox card controlled, and those things are down. Someone had to go get an axe to get into that fridge and give blood to someone who was minutes from dying. We need to stop worrying about eradication. That can't be the priority. These people are paying us for a service. They are relying on these services. And yes, it's important to expunge the threat actor, but we have an obligation, a social obligation to these people to get our act together.
Richard, I appreciate that the Red Bull has kicked in, but I'm just going to
look, I was waiting for this moment. Look, I gotta tell you, to people that are watching,
I'm sorry, but
you have to come, like, these zingers can come to you, like, organically, but at the same time, there's some that you just plant in your head, you're like, I can't wait to use this. This was one that I was waiting for a moment to use this line. Another one that I wanted to use was, don't count the days, make the days count. But I never had an opportunity to use that. That aside, Alex, you gotta agree, the Red Bull kicked in, and Richard played into your narrative a little bit, which is we need some time. But then he went on with the whole yeah, no, we need to turn on the services back up. And that was a very impassioned speech. I think that did that did shake a few people that, all right, we do need to turn the services on. That was important, I think. Richard really turned things around there.
Yep. And first, we're very lucky to have Richard back on the Calgary Advisory Board. So he's going to be bringing some spice to our Calgary event in October 20th. Back to there's that analysis paralysis problem, right? Of do we want it to be built out perfectly, which, the IT purist is going to say absolutely. And then there's going to be operational and then business sides of it. Now, the telecom is a for-profit business, but also is a critical service and may actually have contracts or legal obligations to provide that service that is not being down. Certainly, hospitals, emergency services being affected is incredibly bad. And I think that's really what he's pointing out. We are going back and forth on what to do and getting that green environment to move over, but first, there's no good answers in incident response. And I love this this comparison. A problem has one solution and a dilemma has multiple solutions, all bad. And in incident response, you don't have an incident response problem, you have an incident response dilemma.
Yeah, you're in that situation. James, anything you want to say to that? That was nicely put, Alex, as always.
I don't think I can top that, so I'll leave it with Alex.
I know there are these moments when and I did this deliberately, that even at ODTN, by the time you come to by this time you're sort of at the more than the halfway point, you're at like 60% done of the day. It's hard to keep your energy going. It is not easy. And I don't think folks understand it's not just about this production, it's about the war room itself. It's just a reality. I think folks also need to understand that people need a moment to get out of this. People need to be able to maybe talk to family, get some rest, whatever it is. And here we're just going on and on and on and on and on and dealing with different scenarios. It really mimics the pressures that you face. Speaking of pressure, CyberX team, can we go to, I think it was the 17th minute, 17th minute and 17th minute. Can we just go to that moment again? Because we started to hear a lot of technical speak in response to what Richard had said. I just want to go back to that for a moment, please.
Any idea or any information or any evidence that you can present to us to help us understand what's happened and how can we get rid of this problem?
This was an important moment.
We've been sifting, and unfortunately we had a bit of a delay because of a shift change. The collective agreement does not allow for the team to go beyond 12 hours. So we got to deal with the constraints we have. But what we have determined is that the firmware that is installed on most of our systems is not from the vendor. Certainly it is based off of vendor code, but I'm getting much more suspicious that their compromise a few months ago has resulted in a rogue version that has been put into our environment.
This is the moment I want to stop, because
I
was hoping Newman would dive into this. You provided, this was strategic. You said, I'm growing more and more suspicious. Can we go with that gut feeling? Is that something we should have gone deeper with? Is that something that we should be saying, that I'm growing suspicious? Alex?
Well, again, this isn't a court of law, and a security analyst is having a look at a lot of disparate data. They're suffering from a data overload, first of all, even with the nicest, shiniest SIMs. But you're also going to be dealing with the absence of information. You're going to be dealing with probably competing information or conflicting information, and you have to synthesize that in real time. So, reflecting I'm growing more suspicious would be looking at the firmware's checksum, and just that's not a checksum on the vendor's website at all. File name, version number, things like that are just it's the spidey sense thing, and that's really what SOC analysts are really good at, is looking at something that most humans would just see as a blur, and them being able to start seeing the diamonds in the rough.
They say, right, James, logic will get you from A to Z, imagination will take you everywhere. Honestly, the one luxury of doing this is that I can imagine whatever it is that I want to and just take it down that path. But obviously, I have to, canvas it in a sense of a little bit of realism. But I do want to ask you this, James. Gut feeling when you're doing these investigations and you are thinking about an eradication path, how crucial is that to your work during an incident?
I'd say it's a balance. It's a balance of what you have in your playbook and what
Right.
based on, your gut feel is your experience of everything. It's taking everything you've learned, everything you've experienced, and applying it. That's really where your gut feel is coming in. So to me, with my team, I try to encourage, if they've walked through it, they can articulate how they're walking through it, and this is their gut feel, and this is why they think there's their gut feel. Then let's go down that path. If there's not a gut, if they can't articulate a gut feel, there's then we take a little less credence with that, and
Yeah.
let's go strictly by the playbook on that one.
And you know what was interesting is that Octavia was playing the role of the CTO, and listen, when Octavia talks, bro, people listen. I get scared because I think she's gonna throw something at me because I did something wrong. But these are the different characters you are dealing with, and they have their own emotional responses to things, and they have their own auras and energies. Octavia's an army, a one-person army, but there was something that happened roundabout, if my memory serves me right. Okay, I lie. I'm not using memory. I have notes and timestamps. 44 minutes, yeah, and 50 seconds ish. Yeah, I found it. Thank you, CyberX team, for sharing notes with me and making sure that I have access to them. Yeah, 44 minutes and 55 seconds. This is the moment that I think I want to pause
Bring up your
at.
environment so that we can actually determine how you're doing some of your analysis at this point?
Absolutely, we can do it. However, here's one important note which one of the engineers did share with me earlier. They did notice some sort of corruption within the environment. They saw some of the logs being tampered with. They saw some updates which are not supposed to be over there. However, I can definitely show you how these logs are looking like right now. Just one second, let me pull up the environment for you guys.
So while he's doing that, Newman, I'll turn it back to you, but there's a lot of concern about this. Go ahead, Shrey.
No, understood. And Alex, just to your point, previous point, if we are going to be bringing a third party in there, we'll obviously be working with the union reps to make sure that the incident folks and the investigators that are coming in, they would have authority, and that your team would have to work with them, and you have to work under those folks.
Yeah, we can pause it
As long as
roundabout
you know what you're
here, and
doing.
this can be that closing discussion that we have. For those who are watching this, this was, in my opinion, this was that moment when, the insider thing, oh, there's an insider. It was just like, I wonder who that is. But then suddenly at this moment, and the way Shrey just said it, like, oh, there's some log tampering. And the moment people began to digest it, I think Newman played it really, really well here and said the third party that comes in, your team has to work under them. Because you kept saying that, we've had budget cuts, these cost decisions that we made, the teams, overrun, all of these things. But I think this was that moment when people realized that the insider is not just some villainous actor who will, if this is a Bollywood movie, will just turn up and say, ha ha ha, I got you, and then leave the room and break into a song and dance. This was actually a moment when you realized where the insider could actually be operating, even during your investigation. This was a critical moment. Would you agree, Alex?
Yeah, and I was reflecting back earlier on this call, like if there is a true insider threat, it is incredibly hard to find because unlike an external threat who's having to really brute force their way to access, generally the insider has all the access already, so they're hiding in plain sight. So you are looking at such a larger set of data, and everything looks normal, right? So there's a big challenge there. Now, log tampering is interesting because SIMs generally are supposed to be designed to prevent that from happening, but with enough permissions, being root on the system for most of these sims, you probably can start manipulating the logs, and that's even scarier. What Newman was doing, and he was playing off my earlier conversations of a telecom likely being unionized, and there's going to be friction bringing in a third party to touch anything network based, or anything within the scope of that union. So like, I was thinking to myself, like, you should probably talk to HR before making that decision because of the friction that could happen. And again, that's frustrating. Like, the company is down. We need experts in there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the union reps are going to be concerned about.
I agree. And James, working in the public sector, I think here in Ontario we have a strike, and there's a few things that happen. I think, James, this whole dichotomy of unionized environment bringing in a third party, this triggers a lot of tension, no?
Absolutely. It's something hard to set through, and it's going to be different, in each situation too. It depends how strong the relationships are between the human, the HR side of things, and your teams as well as unions to go through it.
100%, 100%. Well, Alex, James, it's been an hour, and I really, really, really appreciate the fact that, we're doing this. Yes, there's jokes and there's the laughs and all of these things, but for our professional practices, these are good little cathartic moments where we get to think about what we did at certain instances. But for the audience that's watching, I'm really hoping that you're beginning to see that, yes, there's the production element for ODTN, but you're also realizing that when people talk about soft skills and communications as a soft skill, it's not really a soft skill. It's actually a very, very essential skill in that moment when you're dealing with an incident. And when you look at global events right now, realize the way things are phrased, the way they're said, all have implications. That moment when Newman said your team will have to work under them, these are very important moments, and I hope that all of you will take the time to perhaps rewatch these episodes as we get ready for our first ODTN of the fall in Ottawa. They say that the road to success is always under construction. The success of ODTN is always under construction, and I look forward to showing you what myself and my fellow co-chairs have in store for you within 2 weeks' time in the nation's capital. With that, Alex and James, thank you so much for your time. For those watching online, have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend ahead. Hopefully, you get through your Friday. Cheers and take care and good night.